Just think of magnetism. Think of this ability to attract into your life, and think about what you don't like in your life and what you do like, and see if you're willing to see how you had a hand in both.
This is Becoming, the podcast for leaders to think differently with actionable tips in 30 minutes or less to claim your intuition, your influence, and your agency. And finally get to the truth of what stands between you and who you are meant to become. Many of us believe that once we become that future self, then we will be happy, successful, and complete. This podcast exists to shine a light on the truth that the time is now and your future self can be who you become today.
Hello and welcome back, podcast listeners, to Becoming. I'm your host, Stacy B, and today's episode is jam-packed with a bunch of golden nuggets for you on how you can become a magnet to your future today. Part of what my mission is to have the podcast Becoming is, number one, for you to see that everything you need is already within you. You don't have to become something different to have what you want. You need to claim all parts of you to become a magnet or an equal to the life that you desire. And so today's episode, it is my goal to break down these steps very practically so that you can start to think about yourself as a magnet, because that's truly what you are, is a magnet. And it's simply a lie that we have been conditioned to believe, that things are outside of our control. We really can harness our ability to create what we want. And so that's what this episode is about today, is to really unpack, how do we become magnetic so that we call in, combined with our hard work and effort, what it is that we want now, not at some future point in the future that we hope we'll get to, that will someday come, that we can instead intentionally design what it is that we want today and come from that place of certitude in our lives. And by the way, this isn't fixed, right? Being confident is not fixed. Being in a state of certitude is not fixed. It is a constant commitment to catching yourself when you get off track, when you feel less confident, or that your confidence has been shaken. It's the ability to bring yourself back and be honest with yourself and say, you know what? My confidence has been shaken on this topic. What is it that I need to come back to a place of internal safety within myself so that I can start creating again, so that I can step forward in confidence again? So I've boiled this down to 3 steps, because if you can look at the process of creation, of creating your life on purpose, as a simple approach, you're going to realize what you want more quickly and do it more often, because it isn't a 17-step manifestation protocol that you need to do every new moon or full moon or when the sun is just right. No. We want to bring this to you in a grounded way so that you can actually be practical about executing this. So let's go into what I mean a little bit more about becoming a magnet to your future. So when I say becoming a magnet, what I'm really wanting to communicate is that we have the ability, when we own all parts of ourselves, to start to flow with life and with universal intelligence in a whole new way. And so when we think about becoming a magnet, I mean it in the sense of, you are a magnet to what your goals are. You are a magnet to that relationship that you want. You are either attracting or polarizing based upon your thoughts, what you hold in your mind, and what your beliefs are. And so that's what I mean when I say you are a magnet. It is, in the simple, practical way of we truly are magnets to the circumstances in our lives. If you have an achievement, but get the achievement and then start to feel bad about it, then you probably are going to start to attract and call in, magnetize situations to that last thought. Right? That last thought in that quick example was, yes, I got what I wanted, but now, I resented or there's a negative feeling. So that is your dominant state, which becomes your magnet. And so as we start this episode today, just think of your life as a magnet. And I invite you to open yourself up to this perspective because, a lot of times I'll get the question of, well, what do you mean I'm a magnet, Stacy? I have these 3 situations in my life that are awful. How did I call those in? And what I want to invite you to do is consider what thoughts you had prior to that event. Consider what beliefs you have been giving your focus and energy to, and can you see a connection? If you're willing to set yourself aside and check yourself and say, you know what? I actually can see that there is a small connection that is going to be an amazing path for you to explore, to become more conscious of what's going on inside. We have been programmed to care more about what's going on externally. And so we're really quick to say this person did that or blame external circumstances. But the day that you say, no more, what's going on inside of me? And am I willing to be honest with myself that I have not been a steward of my garden like I want to be? That's when the game changes and you can start to really be mindful. So as I begin going into this episode today, just think of magnetism. Think of this ability to attract into your life and think about what you don't like in your life and what you do like. And see if you're willing to see how you had a hand in both. And again, when you become honest with yourself, the game changes.
Are you ready to step into your power as a conscious leader? Are you seeking a community of extraordinary, like-minded women who are making a difference in their internal and external world? Well, look no further. We'd love to introduce to you Legendary Leaders Advisory, a premier women-led and women-owned leadership community that's focused on success, not just externally, but in the internal world as well. We are the first and only leadership community that contributes a portion of its membership fees to fund and inspire the next generation of leaders through both scholarship and mentorship opportunities. And the best part, it's led by its own members. If you're looking for a community with a different conversation that addresses the necessary connection between internal and external results, look no further. Click the link in the show notes to learn more about Legendary Leaders Advisory, and one of our Truth Teacher consultants will reach out to you to discuss the opportunity further.
So, what are these 3 steps? They boil down to 3 things: your identity, what you think of yourself and your relationship with yourself; resonance, that's number 2. Where are you hanging out energetically? And 3, alignment. What do you do when you get misaligned? What do you do when you are out of sorts? You get off track. And what does that alignment look like? We talked about alignment in depth in a prior episode. I encourage you to check it out. Alignment is acceleration, because when you're aligned, it is like fuel on the fire. It is gasoline on the fire to accelerate you to your desires. So let's dive in first to identity. So Neville Goddard, which I love his quotes, and I've talked about him on prior episodes as well, but he has this concept, and the concept is thinking from versus thinking to. And what I took that to mean is think from the top of the mountain. In other words, think of your vision or your goal that you want. That is thinking from in this example. So we want to think from and work backwards, if you will. So we want to think from the mountaintop versus the beginning of the trail. So thinking to is thinking about, okay, I have to go to the top of the mountain. I have to do the hike. I have to make sure I have the right shoes. I have a lot of concern about the how. I'm going to ask myself different questions. I'm going to have different internal dialogue with myself if I'm thinking to, because I'm wrapped up in the how. When I think from, I am already in association with my outcome that I'm after. And so the more that you can think from the end result, you're going to ask yourself different questions. And so let's say that you have a vision for your company to achieve 10 million in revenue. Thinking from is thinking from the place of you've already achieved the 10 million. What team do you need? What marketing are you doing? What products do you have? What's your pricing look like? That's one set of questions. Whereas if I say my vision is to get to 10 million and here's how I'm going to get up that mountain, I'm asking myself and having dialogue with myself from this beginning standpoint. So I may not necessarily ask myself what kind of team I need or products or pricing. Yes, I'm going to have those conversations right when you're starting any venture. But the point is that I'm way more in the how of how I'm going to get there versus being there and working backwards from a question and dialogue standpoint. Now, I want to clarify what I'm talking about is your internal state here. I'm talking about your identity and the way that you view yourself. So let's be clear that there is absolutely a how. There's absolutely the importance of the marketing and sales strategy and all of the how that goes into realizing the $10 million revenue goal. But the dialogue within is what I'm talking about. And so that's the first part of identity is, do you identify with your vision? Do you identify with your future? Because for you to magnetize your future, you have to get in relationship with it. You have to be willing to associate with it. So an example of this is if I identify myself as worthy on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I have worthiness issues, I am not a magnet to my future because my identity, in other words, the way I see myself is I lack self-worth. I don't value myself consistently. And so my work would be to start to ask myself, what would it look like as a person that valued themselves? Well, they would prioritize self-care. They would prioritize time with family. They would prioritize time off. Those are a few examples of self-worth, right? Another way to kind of look at this is when you look at your relationships and you look at the way that you treat others, do you treat yourself with that same regard? Because that is a great way to dive into your identity and to see where there may be a gap between where you are currently and magnetizing your future. The next piece or step to become a magnet for your future is resonance. So in the universal law, most of you are familiar with law of attraction. That is the law that is mainstream. But there is a prior law, and that law is the law of vibration. And I like to highlight this as I explain this step because your emotions and how you feel has energy. It is just as powerful as kinetic energy. It's just as powerful as any other type of energy. And so how you feel has a resonance to it. So if you are in doubt or you are down on yourself, your resonance is not a match to your future. And so a great housekeeping, tip for you could be, where do I consistently notice that I'm not feeling well? Where do I notice that I get caught up, I get triggered, and that I start to feel negative or think negative thoughts. Our thinking connects right to our feeling. And so your desire, your vision and goals for your future are birthed from you, right? They come from your heart. I love the idea that, God has given you this vision and you alone, because only you can do it. You are equipped to fulfill the vision that God has put on your heart. And so thinking of resonance and thinking of this from a standpoint of connectedness to self, this vision and goal that you desire in your life is birthed from you. In other words, it's connected to you. And so I want to invite you to adopt the mindset or a change in mindset to start to consider that you are one with your vision and goals. It's just a matter of steps to realize them, right? It's launching that strategy. It's launching the thing. But to become a magnet to it, it's so important to be in resonance with it, to have a relationship with it. So let's ground this a little bit. So when I talk about have a relationship with your goal, you must see first that it's birthed from you. So your goal and vision for your life is not separate from you. In other words, it's not out there. It's in here. It came from your idea, your inspiration, your desire. All of these steps today will only work if you can start to see that you are the source of all that is. My desires are different than your desires, right? My goals are different than your goals. They may be of the same vein, but they're different, right? We have different wants and we have different needs. The biggest thing that will help you start to be magnetic is to see that these things are not outside of you, that these things are not separate from you. And that's really how a lot of us live our lives, is things are separate, right? We have to go out there and achieve. We have to go and get. But the more that we can come home to the truth and to ourselves, which is the inspiration comes from within. And your resonance just calls that to you faster. So think of this idea of your vision and your future is a part of you. It's not separate. And so how would the person that's achieving your future, how would they feel every day? What time would they get out of bed? That's a small example, but the feeling is what I'm looking for. I don't care if you get out of bed at 6 a.m. or 11 a.m. It's the feeling. Do you get out of bed at 11 a.m. and are joyous and blissful and ready to start the day? Or do you get up at 11 a.m. criticizing yourself that you didn't wake up earlier? It's all about that internal dialogue. And so thinking about resonance is like hold hands with your future. Ask it what it wants. Treat it like your lover, right? Your closest friend, your closest confidant. You're going to get inspiration from that state of resonance that is different than if you continue to believe you're separate from it. You hope it will happen. These 5 things have to be done before you're free to create what you want. Whatever the stories are, your resonance is truly most important. If you can focus more on becoming a match, becoming the energy that's a match to your future, your ideas and guidance and insight is going to be completely different than if you continue to believe you're separate. And the final step is alignment. Again, I talked about this in depth in a prior episode. I encourage you to go back and listen to it. But alignment is asking yourself, and not even asking, but checking yourself when you get out of alignment. If you prioritize your identity as it relates to your future, if you prioritize, am I in resonance with my future? Am I emotionally feeling the way I would? Let's just go back to that $10 million revenue example. Do I move through the world and feel the way I would feel if I achieved $10 million in revenue? I can say that for me, if I ask myself on the goals that I have not achieved, that question, I can confidently tell you no. because if I was in resonance, I would be calling it in. If you were in resonance, you would be calling it in. And so ask yourself, am I moving through the world? Am I feeling the way I would feel if I were at the top of the mountain, right? Back to our identity of thinking from versus thinking to. I know for me, like I said, I could confidently say no on those goals and the future pieces that I have not realized. I have not been a vibrational match to that future today. When I adjust my alignment and I start to prioritize being a match, opportunities come out of nowhere. Of course, there is effort, right? You have to make effort that's aligned. And I think that's another part of alignment. How do you become a magnet to your future is also making aligned effort. It's also taking aligned action. If you're saying you want one thing, but then sitting on the couch, that's not aligned. And so what do you need to do to become this magnet is to constantly inquire, am I aligned or am I off? And when you're off, simply be honest with yourself and make adjustments so that you can be aligned. If you allow these 3 steps to guide you, I assure you that you will start to become a magnet to your future. You'll start to not only do the external action, but you'll follow that up with an intentional inner state that is aligned with your future. That's a match to your future. Asking yourself these questions and checking yourself in this way allows you to ensure that your identity and how you're showing up in the world is aligned. Your emotions are in resonance with the way that you would feel in the future. So harness these steps and prioritize becoming a magnet. The old paradigm of struggle, of stress, is expired. This is an invitation to the new paradigm. It's an invitation to your new way of being if you start to prioritize these 3 things. So let us know how you see these things unfolding, what challenges you might be experiencing, or what really worked well for you. And we look forward to hearing how you become more of a magnet to your future.
Are you experiencing change and breakthroughs as you listen to Becoming? If so, show us some love and hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and share an episode. I love bringing this content to you each week, and together, listener by listener, we can wake up the world. See you next week.